He opened the Bible, expecting familiar words, familiar stories, familiar comfort. Instead, something unexpected unsettled his soul. As his eyes moved across the sacred pages, one name seemed to echo louder than all others: Muhammad. Not written plainly in ink, but woven through patterns, prophecies, and passages he had read his entire life yet never truly seen. What began as casual curiosity turned into sleepless nights, trembling questions, and a fear he could no longer silence. Was this coincidence, imagination, or something far more profound? Verses he once skimmed now felt alive, pointing beyond their surface meaning. Ancient promises, mysterious references, and disputed translations suddenly formed a picture he never expected the Bible to reveal. Friends warned him to stop. Teachers told him not to question. But once the door was opened, it could not be closed. This was not a story about abandoning faith. It was about confronting it. A journey where certainty collapsed, tradition was challenged, and truth demanded a cost. This is the soul-shaking account of a man who dared to read the Bible with open eyes and discovered a name that changed everything. From the earliest days of biblical interpretation, certain passages have stirred intense debate, not because they are unclear, but because their implications are unsettling. Deuteronomy, Shabbat is one such verse. God declares, "I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren. I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him." At first glance, many assume this refers exclusively to a prophet arising from within Israel. Yet the language invites deeper scrutiny. The phrase "from among their brethren" is used elsewhere in the Bible to describe related but distinct peoples, not always Israelites themselves. This subtle wording has opened the door to alternative interpretations that challenge long-held assumptions. Moses was not merely a prophet. He was a lawgiver, a statesman, and the leader of a nation bound by divine law. When the text speaks of a prophet like you, the comparison extends beyond spiritual insight to authority, governance, and the delivery of a complete moral code. Critics have asked whether later Israelite prophets truly mirrored Moses in this comprehensive role, or whether the verse points forward to a figure who would, like Moses, establish a community guided by divine instruction. And equally striking is the statement, "I will put my words in his mouth." This description suggests revelation that is received verbatim rather than interpreted through personal reflection. Throughout Scripture, this phrasing is rare and significant, indicating a prophet who delivers God's message directly, faithfully, and in full. For some readers, this aligns more closely with the idea of a final messenger, rather than a reformer within an existing tradition. Over centuries, theologians, rabbis, and scholars have wrestled with these words, often shaped by theological commitments rather than purely linguistic analysis. What makes Deuteronomy, Shabbat so powerful is not that it forces a single conclusion, but that it compels honest readers to ask whether the text has been limited by tradition. When Scripture is approached without fear, hidden prophecies do not shout, they whisper, inviting those who are willing to listen more closely. Faith is often presented as certainty, yet the Bible itself repeatedly honors those who dared to ask questions. Acts offers a striking example when it describes the people of Berea as more noble, because they received the message eagerly, while also examining the Scriptures daily to see if what they were hearing was true. This single verse quietly dismantles the idea that belief should be passive or unquestioning. Instead, it presents sincere investigation as a virtue, not a threat to faith. The Bereans did not reject the message outright, nor did they accept it blindly. They balanced openness with scrutiny, showing that truth does not fear examination. Their approach reveals a powerful principle. Revelation invites verification. Scripture was not meant to be locked away behind authority or tradition, but placed into the hands of those willing to search it carefully. In calling the Bereans noble-minded, the text elevates critical engagement as a moral strength. This mindset stands in contrast to religious environments where questioning is discouraged or even condemned. Fear often enters when beliefs are inherited rather than understood. Acts 30 exposes that fear by demonstrating that authentic faith grows stronger under scrutiny. If a belief is true, investigation will not weaken it. It will refine it. If it is false or incomplete, questioning becomes the pathway to clarity. Throughout history, reformers and seekers have echoed the spirit of the Bereans, refusing to surrender their conscience to religious authority alone. They recognize that God's message, if divine, would withstand honest inquiry. Questioning, in this sense, is not rebellion. It is responsibility. It honors the intellect and the soul, acknowledging that belief carries weight and consequences. Acts 30 ultimately challenges readers to examine their own approach to faith. Do they believe because they have searched, or because they were told to? The verse does not command doubt, but it does demand integrity. In doing so, it reframes questioning not as a danger to belief, but as one of its greatest strengths. Every sacred text passes through human language, and language is never neutral. Words carry culture, assumptions, and theological frameworks that shape how meaning is understood. John captures this tension when Jesus says, "I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. However, when He, the Spirit of truth, has come, He will guide you into all truth." This statement has been translated faithfully across languages, yet its interpretation varies dramatically depending on theological expectations brought to the text. Translation deals with rendering words from one language to another, but interpretation decides what those words are allowed to mean. In Greek, the phrase "guide you into all truth" suggests a process rather than a single moment. It implies future clarification, unfolding understanding, and continued divine instruction. Some readers understand this solely as guidance given to Jesus' immediate disciples, confined to a specific historical moment. Others see in it a broader promise that divine truth was not fully disclosed at once, and that further guidance would come in a form they could later comprehend. The statement "you cannot bear them now" is especially revealing. It acknowledges human limitation in receiving revelation. Meaning is not only spoken, it is timed. This challenges the assumption that all truth was completed or finalized at one point in history. Theology often steps in here, narrowing interpretation to protect established doctrines, even when the language itself allows wider possibilities. Dumbly interpretive frameworks also shape who, or what the Spirit of truth is understood to be. Some see it as an internal inspiration, others as a divine guide through future revelation. The text itself does not fully define the mechanism, leaving space for theological influence to fill in the gaps. John demonstrates how meaning is shaped not just by what is written, but by how readers approach it. When translation is treated as interpretation, the text is confined. When language is allowed to speak within its historical and linguistic context, the passage opens itself to deeper reflection, reminding readers that divine truth may unfold gradually, rather than all at once. Human beings are often conditioned to fear doubt, especially when it comes to matters of faith. Mark Chi captures this dynamic when Jesus critiques those who honor God with their lips while their hearts are far from Him, saying, "They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely..." The essence of this statement is not condemnation of devotion, but a warning against allowing rigid tradition and unexamined beliefs to replace true understanding. Fear of doubt can become a barrier that prevents believers from engaging with Scripture honestly, leaving them trapped in ritual rather than insight. 10. When people encounter teachings that challenge their assumptions, the natural response is often defensive. Questioning is misperceived as rebellion, and doubt is equated with unfaithfulness. This mindset, however, can distort spiritual growth. By discouraging inquiry, communities risk creating adherents who follow without understanding, who repeat doctrines without internalizing their significance. Mark Chich exposes the danger of this approach. Adherence to human traditions, even in the name of faith, can replace genuine connection with God. Means the declaration in Deuteronomy, "Look, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one," stands as one of the clearest and most enduring affirmations of monotheism in the entire Bible. Yet its significance goes far beyond a simple statement of belief. It establishes a continuity of divine message that stretches across generations of prophets, from Moses to later messengers, emphasizing that the worship of one God is not a transient idea, but the core of divine revelation. Monotheism is not merely a theological concept. It is a unifying thread linking all prophetic teachings, providing a consistent framework through which humanity is invited to understand God's will. Banned throughout the Scriptures, prophets spoke in different historical contexts, addressing distinct challenges in communities, yet their central message remained remarkably consistent. There is one God who governs creation, directs human morality, and demands sincere. From Isaiah to Jeremiah, and even in the New Testament, the call to recognize and submit to one divine authority echoes the same foundational principle expressed in Deuteronomy. This continuity reinforces the notion that revelation is not fragmented or contradictory, but part of a cohesive divine plan. The insistence on one God also serves to challenge societal tendencies toward polytheism, or the division of divine attributes among multiple beings. By affirming the oneness of God, Deuteronomy frames all subsequent prophetic instruction within a singular, coherent vision. The prophets, regardless of the era in which they lived, consistently point back to this essential truth, reminding their audiences that fidelity to one God is both a spiritual and moral imperative. Understanding the continuity of this message helps believers and scholars alike recognize patterns in Scripture that might otherwise seem disconnected. One God, one message, one guiding principle of divine unity provides the foundation upon which faith and moral conduct are built. It is a reminder that the essence of prophecy is not novelty, but fidelity to the truth that transcends time, culture, and circumstance. The pursuit of truth is rarely comfortable, and Matthew captures this reality with startling clarity. Jesus warns, "Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." At first glance, these words seem harsh, even shocking, yet they reveal a profound truth about the cost of spiritual awakening. Choosing to follow truth, to embrace divine guidance over social convention or familial expectation, often leads to tension, misunderstanding, and isolation. Spiritual transformation here. When a person begins to live in alignment with principles that challenge the status quo, relationships are tested. Friends may feel alienated, family members may resist change, and communities accustomed to conformity may perceive the seeker as a threat. This is not a punishment, but a natural consequence of living authentically in accordance with truth that is not universally accepted. Jesus' warning emphasizes that the path of faith is not measured by comfort, but by commitment. Dumb isolation can be both a burden and a blessing. It forces reflection, strengthens resilience, and deepens dependence on God rather than human approval. Those who endure these challenges often emerge with a stronger sense of purpose, clarity of conviction, and a closer connection to the divine. The sword of division is not meant to harm, but to separate superficial allegiance from genuine devotion. Banja, Matthew, Sure, Censor Sus, Censor Loop, reminds believers that truth carries a price. Spiritual awakening may create friction in the most intimate spheres of life, yet it is precisely this tension that cultivates maturity and discernment. Following truth faithfully requires courage, perseverance, and the willingness to stand alone if necessary, affirming that spiritual growth is often inseparable from sacrifice, challenge, and sometimes profound solitude.